Welcome back to Less Stress for You and I. We're going to be mentioning some questions about HBP, hypertension, and LBP. What is blood pressure? What effects does blood pressure have on humans? Do animals have blood pressure problems? What effect does blood pressure have on blood vessels? What effect does it have on the arteries, the kidneys, and the brain? And what effect does blood pressure have on the eyes? How many types of stroke are there? Where does aneurysms happen? What are the top and bottom numbers mean in blood pressure? Why is blood pressure taken on the arm? What are the ranges of blood pressure? And what are the differences between the top number and the bottom numbers in blood pressure? We hope to give you information to better understand what blood pressure and hypertension is and how to deal with it in your everyday life.
My first recognition that the environment has deep and profound influences on people's health was when I arrived in medical school at the age of 22 and I went to medical school in Baltimore and first saw East Baltimore and was being driven around by an upperclassman and was in shock. I said to the driver, I said, "When was there a war here?" Well, I started working at the medical school and started to see patients from this community. I realized that I was trying to treat social ills with pills. And the issues that people were bringing to me had nothing to do with medicine. They had to do with a lack of core resources, health resources, access to healthy food, access to employment, access to opportunity. And here I was looking for the pill to give them to treat the manifestation of this great social deprivation. You need different kind of people working on public health than you used to. It's not just doctors and nurses and the like anymore. You need to actually bring in people who understand other aspects and other domains of society, like, for instance, how the built environment contributes to health.
Put that thing you call food down. You don't want to eat that. Do you know that processed food will do to your body?
Blood pressure is equal to the cardiac output, the volume of blood pumped out of the heart per minute, multiplied by the arteriolar resistance. Blood flow depends on the rate of heartbeats and the volume of blood pumped out with each beat. If rate or volume increases, blood pressure goes up. Likewise, increased resistance raises blood pressure, as when arteries downstream from the heart constrict. Over time, high blood pressure or hypertension damages many organs.
Yeah, well, okay. Don't listen to that angel. It's not like you're fat or anything. You don't have to be overweight to have a health problem. But I'm so hungry. He looks fine to me. You want him to have a stroke? A stroke? Well, maybe not. Allow me to enlighten you. A couple of things that contribute to having a stroke: having high blood pressure, smoking, and high cholesterol.
The heart then requires more oxygen and is more susceptible to angina or a heart attack. Second, arteries and arterioles can be damaged. Arterial sclerosis results when blood moves through the vessels at high pressure, damaging the protective cells lining the vessel. White blood cells are drawn to the damaged area and form plaque.
Hell, oh, I love it. But what can I do? Plaque blockage can suddenly rupture, causing blood to clot inside an artery at the site of the rupture.
Third, kidneys can be damaged. The capillaries of the kidney are delicate. Continually subjected to high blood pressure, they break down, becoming permeable to proteins and other molecules. The kidney's tubules can become clogged, decreasing the kidney's ability to make urine. Also, the proteins injure the capillaries' membranes, causing more damage and worsening the situation.
That sounds like hell. Oh, I love it. But what can I do? plaque blockage can suddenly rupture, causing blood to clot inside an artery at the site of the rupture. And we don't want that to happen to our Jimmy. You're starving! Take a bite! According to the National Stroke Association, after the age of 55, stroke is double for every decade a person is alive.
Fourth, the retina of the eye can be injured if its delicate capillaries are damaged. Localized hemorrhages can occur, causing scarring and formation of new, more fragile capillaries to replace the old ones.
Remember, Jimmy, you're only getting older. And being Afro-American, you have twice the risk of stroke, more susceptible to high blood pressure, diabetes, and obesity. Also, your stroke risk increases if a family member has had a stroke or a heart attack.
Finally, the blood vessels of the brain can be injured. High blood pressure can cause clots to break off from atherosclerotic plaques, blocking blood flow to the rest of the brain. This is called a thrombotic stroke. Continual exposure to high blood pressure may also cause a blood vessel to burst, leading to a hemorrhagic stroke.
That much? I didn't realize it. Take a bite already, will ya? Do you know how much sodium is in that? According to the CDC, you're only supposed to consume up to 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day. That adds up to only half a teaspoon. Studies have shown that Afro-Americans have a greater sensitivity to sodium compared to their counterparts. Excessive salt intake has caused Afro-Americans to require high doses of high blood pressure medication.
And they'll tell you. And it's not rocket science. It's there. People are stressed by being, living in a circumstance where they're paycheck to paycheck, or even less than paycheck to paycheck. They are stretching a paycheck, that doesn't cover all of their needs. So one month they're paying the electricity, another month they're paying the car bill, another month they're paying the rent, and then the child's medicine comes up, and that wipes out, whatever strategy they had for the next month. But if you have stressors, which we all do, and no resources to cope with those stressors, well, then those stressors just basically fester in you. And in fact, there are studies, a number of studies that show physiologically in our bodies that stress hormones, they rise when you have chronic, constant stress. And those stress hormones actually, they wear down your body. They cause essentially a kind of a premature aging process. They turn down your immune system, and they increase essentially the damage to your blood vessels, to your heart, to your kidneys, and to other necessary organs, because these hormones are designed to be essentially quick response hormones. They're not designed to be constantly elevated in your body.
Hi, I'm back. It's Jimmy's Rage. What is the misconception about HBP? Why is HBP called the silent killer? What are some of the myths about HBP, hypertension, and LBP? Will losing control of your emotions cause a shift in blood pressure? When sitting down and standing up very quickly cause lightheadedness? Here are some of the conditions which may or may not happen. Results of HBP: nosebleeds, headaches, or dizziness. Number 2, hypertension may cause sweating, nervousness, and trouble sleeping. Number 3, HBP may cause blurred vision possible. Vomiting, shortness of breath. Number 4, outrageous. You can have a HBP experience and have no symptoms until you have a stroke or a heart attack. Really? He was standing right next to me. The next minute, he was on the ground. Silent killer. This really pisses me off. I'm out of here. Drop the mic. Oh, flash! Jimmy just had a stroke, heart attack, or was it an aneurysm? Well, we don't know for sure. Maybe he'll be back, and maybe he won't. Back to you, Saran.
Greetings and welcome to Saran's Perspective. Today's topic is hypertension. Ooh, spooky. And it is quite spooky. Symptoms. There are myriad symptoms, but they're not quite symptoms. The way I understand it is that if you stand up too fast, that's a form of hypertension because you get dizzy, the blood rush and the flow, and it doesn't equate, and equilibrium's thrown off, so forth and so on. Ways to avoid hypertension. Well, they don't really know. They suggest dieting, exercising, of course. That's kind of common sense, don't you think? They say avoiding stress is definitely helpful. Well, how do we do that? It's no ancient Chinese secret. Ta-da! Really avoiding the things that are troublesome to you. So, how can we do that in this fast-paced country of ours? It's almost inconceivable. Meditation is a good way, perhaps. Another good way is doing things that you enjoy doing, things that, bring you a certain amount of joy. Avoiding stressful situations, which of course is an impossible in today's society. I should say an impossibility in today's society. Now, when one looks for symptoms, one can look for, as Jimmy so eloquently pointed out, it goes to dizziness, nosebleed, lightheadedness, vertigo, not being able to stand up and falling down. You want to avoid that whenever possible because that can strike your head, lead to concussion, so forth and so on. So, when it comes to hypertension, the best thing we possibly can do is get regular checkups, try to watch our diet, try to avoid, when possible, stressful situations, or develop a methodology or technique for yourself that allows you to push stress to the side. Push it to the side. It doesn't have to stay within you. Remember, if you carry the burden will stay with you, and the burden will bring you down. We don't want to go down. We want to stay up as long as possible, right? We want to keep that light shining in our eyes. That being said, hypertension is sometimes called the silent killer. Strokes, aneurysms, heart attacks. Wow. I guess that pretty much covers it. So please try to remember, if you feel lightheaded when you're getting up out of bed, simply that simple act of getting up, it might be a warning for you that perhaps you should pay a visit to your doctor and get your blood pressure checked out. Now, however, that's not the end all of be all. So please don't think that because the doctor tells you, the blood pressure is fine, that's the end of it. Because there might be something involved in your diet. There might be some kind of plaque buildup somewhere. So really, hypertension is something you always have to be aware of, all right? So if you lead a very stressful life and your diet is bad, and you might be a likely candidate for hypertension. And the things that follow it, such as we previously discussed: stroke, aneurysm, heart attack, or what the doctors like to call major cardio infarction, I believe it's called. Yes. So let's avoid stress whenever possible. Let's eat well. Enjoy the company of good friends. Enjoy your life while you're here, all right? Because we only have so many days, so many years in a lifetime. This is Saran's Perspective, wishing you a stress-free day. Peace. And we're out. Is he dead? I don't know. Medic! Man down!
About 25% of the world has hypertension, or high blood pressure, which basically means that it's pretty common. Let's start with defining it. Typically, it's represented by two numbers. The top number is the systolic blood pressure, which is the arterial pressure when the heart's contracting. And the lower number is the diastolic blood pressure, which is the arterial pressure when the heart's relaxing or refilling. Most of the time, blood pressure is taken in the brachial artery in your upper arm, because if the pressure's high there, it's probably high throughout all the arteries. Normal systolic blood pressure is between 90 and 119 millimeters of mercury, and normal diastolic is between 60 and 79 millimeters of mercury. Prehypertension, or on the high side of normal, is between 120 and 139 millimeters of mercury on the systolic side, and between 80 and 89 on the diastolic side. Stage 1 hypertension is between 140 and 159 millimeters of mercury on the systolic side, and between 90 and 99 on the diastolic side. Stage 2 hypertension is between 160 and 179 millimeters of mercury on the systolic side, and between 100 and 109 on the diastolic side. And finally, stage 3 hypertension is anything over 180 millimeters of mercury on the systolic side, and 110 millimeters of mercury on the diastolic side. Typically, both systolic and diastolic pressures tend to climb or fall together, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you can have systolic or diastolic hypertension, where one number is normal and the other is really high. And in that situation, it's called isolated systolic hypertension or isolated diastolic hypertension.
Did you know that there are risk factors that you can't control, like race, heredity, age, gender? And Afro-Americans tend to develop high blood pressure early in life in families. The older you get, the greater your chance of developing high blood pressure.
About 90% of the time, though, hypertension happens without a clearly identifiable underlying reason, and we call this primary hypertension or essential hypertension. In other words, over time, pressure in the arteries begins to silently creep up. There are a bunch of risk factors that we've identified for this primary hypertension, and these include old age, obesity, salt-heavy diets, and sedentary lifestyles.
A number of studies that show physiologically in our bodies that stress hormones, they rise when you have chronic, constant stress. And those stress hormones actually, they wear down your body.
And men tend to develop high blood pressure early in life than women. If Jimmy's going to have a stroke anyway, why shouldn't he do anything to change it?
About 10% of the time, there is a specific underlying condition that can be found, which is the cause of the hypertension, and we call this secondary hypertension.
Explanatory factor for how other domains of your life, your poor job, your poor housing, your crime-ridden neighborhood, your lack of access to healthy food, all of those stressors can actually get inside the body, into the bloodstream, and change your actual physiology and increase the likelihood that you will die prematurely.
For example, anything that limits the blood flow to the kidneys or the renal blood flow can cause hypertension, things like atherosclerosis, vasculitis, or aortic dissections. This is because the kidneys play a super important role in blood pressure regulation. When not enough blood is flowing to the kidneys secrete the hormone renin, which ultimately helps the kidneys retain more water. That water contributes to more fluid in the arteries, making them more full, which leads to higher pressures.
Because there are many things we can do to reduce the risk of strokes. Maintaining a healthy weight, eating foods low in saturated fats, trans fats, salts, and sugars. Eating a diet that incorporates colorful fruits and vegetables, whole grains, poultry, fish, nuts, low-fat dairy products, and limit red meat.
Diseases can cause secondary hypertension as well. Fibromuscular dysplasia, which affects young women, can cause the walls of the large and medium-sized arteries to thicken. If it involves the renal artery and limits blood flowing to the kidneys, it triggers more renin. Another one is a tumor that produces excess aldosterone, and just like renin, excess aldosterone leads to fluid retention. Another way to think about hypertension is to categorize it as benign hypertension or malignant hypertension. Benign hypertension is any hypertension that's in stage 1 or stage 2, and typically this causes no immediate symptoms. Malignant hypertension is really severe stage 3 hypertension, and this is an emergency because it can cause increased intracranial pressure and organ damage.
Of course, if you don't have enough resources to take care of your basic needs, you're going to be stressed, and stress is not good for your health. So starting right there using common sense, you don't even need the data to make the link between economic insecurity and instability and poor health.
Limiting sugary foods and beverages. Why should he sacrifice flavor? We don't have to sacrifice flavor. We just need to be creative. We can add fresh garlic and different herbs to his food. Stop talking already. You can also exercise more. Limit alcohol to no more than 1 drink a day. And if you smoke, stop. If you don't smoke, don't start, and avoid secondhand smoke. I think I can do that. Later on for that old devil.
Another way of putting this is, does your zip code matter more than your genetic code? Rates of chronic disease are much higher in low-income communities. Being poor doesn't just mean that you don't have enough money. It means that you are also going to be exposed to a whole host of influences and forces that we know.
With good exercise, I think I'll be okay.